Hello, everyone, and welcome to By Design with Dr. Erika. Today on our show, I am joined by Kelly Knowles, founder of Kelly K Consulting. Kelly is my first. Oh, that was off. Kelly is a professional development coach specializing in working with two groups of women: women in their midlife looking for their next, and those that are Gen Y and Gen Z looking for their growth. And today we're going to be chatting with her about being an entrepreneur, but still in the full time space, and how understanding yourself can essentially make you a better boss, a better entrepreneur, a better businesswoman, just better all around. So I'm glad you're here. Stay tuned and let's get into this. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Erika. I'm thrilled to be talking with you today.
Yay, I'm so excited. So, Kelly, I have a question right off bat.
All right.
You have a lot going on, my dear. You are full time at a law firm. Are you still doing adjunct
I
professor?
am. I am.
Okay. And you
Yeah,
have Kelly K Consulting.
I do. I do.
How did that all come about? Like, tell us.
It's so interesting. I like to have, as we would say, a lot of irons in the fire. And a few years ago, I ran into some old professors at an event. I had taught college for years prior to coming to work at the law firm. And they remembered me. That in itself, Dr. Erika, made me like I was a peacock the rest of the day because it's been a while and they remembered me. And I said, I'd love to get back into the teaching space. And so one of the professors, he still has this very strong Nigerian accent. He said, I remember you, you tell. And he went on to say, here's who you need to go see. So that is what got me back into the teaching journey. I love teaching college. I teach online, so you really get a lot of students from all over. And
Mhm.
then I really wanted to start Kelly K Consulting. It comes from a place of real transition for me in midlife. I've always, I think, been in consultative mode, if that makes sense. So when I was in sales, I did it completely in a consultative style. I think every job I've been in, it's been that kind of thing. And just really knew we'd had some real changes in our life. And I knew that I needed to pursue my passion. I really believe we are all here for a purpose. The author of the book, The War of Art, actually says, don't cheat the world by
Mm.
what you've been put here to do. And I just love that because he recognizes how important what our talents, strengths, and abilities are, not only to the way we're made up, but to our contribution to the world. So
Mhm.
we all have to have a vision, right? But yeah, there's a lot that's happening. And some days I just look at my calendar and go, okay, we'll get through this. And thankfully I have a spouse who is low maintenance and he does most of the cooking and is an introvert. I know, right? And so that really makes it easier. It doesn't mean
Mm.
that there are days when I'm not cooked just like everyone else, but it does help a little bit.
Gotcha, gotcha. And you just said like a perfect gem right there when you were talking
Mm,
about, what we're all put on this earth to do. And we all kind of have
yeah.
this mission and this sort of charge to go
Yeah.
after that dream. And it's funny, I kind of, I guess you can say I'm midlife in where I am in my stage of life. And I hit that point where I was in corporate for years and just knew I was being called to do something different
Mm.
and really struggling with the ability to step out on faith and step out on that limb. How do you sort of help your women that you're working with get past that
Thank
roadblock?
you. It's there's so much fear. There's so much fear, and one of the things that people get used to steady state sometimes.
Mm.
A lot of times, people are perfectionists. Well, with being a perfectionist comes this thing. There you go, called analysis paralysis.
Yes.
And one of the things that I do with a lot of my coaching clients is I'm their catalyst. We take those things that just seem enormous and monstrous and overwhelming. And we think about how we put them into action. There's an old term from the 90s called your BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal. And it
Wait,
was
what
penned
is it
by
called? Your
it's
bead?
your BHAG, your
Okay.
big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's interesting when I talk with women, whether it's in my group coaching or one-on-one, they'll tell me, and they'll think that they've just announced that they are going to be the next business mogul, the next whoever, Warren Buffett, whatever. And nothing they say is unreasonable. It's
Mm,
all so realistic, but sometimes within the limitations of our own thoughts and beliefs, it seems huge to us.
mm,
And so we start to break that down. We start to look at that in a really more, how do we take that and break it down into actionable pieces? It is realistic. It is achievable. It's just that sometimes we don't know how to get started, you
mhm.
know? And I love doing that with women. I love pushing past the fear. And so much of it's the fear of the unknown. And
Right.
what I like to talk about is, it's been a common phrase lately, progress over perfection.
Yes.
Let's make progress, because perfectionism will paralyze you. And I speak from experience. And that is the piece that often we're working through, and kind of breaking down those ideas so that people are not paralyzed. And the other thing is I kind of joke, we're not doing brain surgery here. There's no one on the table waiting for them to be able to live. Now, if you're a brain surgeon pursuing your goals, I still want to work with you. But most of us are not. And so when we kind of take that weight off, a lot of times my clients will say, this releases me.
Mm,
And what a gift it is to hear that. And what a gift it is to see them start moving. It's so
mm.
cool. So
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. It's always, to your point, breaking it down and taking the overwhelm out of it
That's
that really
right.
helps a lot of women. Do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
find in your practice and working with your clients, there are women that have those BHAGs, right? Do you find that some women struggle to even come up with what their big audacious goal is at all?
Absolutely. I just did a webinar recently and I re recorded it because it's something I think every woman needs to watch. And in this webinar, I show pictures of me at 10 years old. And why 10? Well, there's something about that age before you kind of hit the puberty and all the things,
Uh-huh.
where you're really often in your authentic, genuine, sassy self,
Right.
right? And I love showing this picture of me with just my hands on my hips and my little blonde self. But it is so much, I ask this question, who did you want to be when
Mm,
you were 10? And, it doesn't matter. Some people say, well, I wanted to live in Barbie's dream house. That still gives you clues. For me, I was going to be a corporate lawyer and the very first woman president. That was my immediate answer at 10 years old. And, it gives you clues, it gives you insights. Think about the things that you enjoyed doing when you were 10.
mhm.
I read your bio and I kind of got cracked up because I did a lot of planning and organizing and space management. I took my little tea table and I put a blanket on top of it. I took my Barbie lamp and then I went and got my mother's old school metal recipe box. And that was my desk.
Oh,
Yes. And that recipe box was my filing cabinet, and the Barbie lamp was my official desk lamp. When you think about those things, it gives you clues and insights.
mhm.
So when someone's struggling with, well, I don't know, I just know there's more, I'm ready to move to my next,
Right.
then that's a great place to start thinking about who you were. And for some of us, we got to go back a little more. For some
Mhm.
of us, 10 may not have been a great time for us.
Right.
I know we're going to be talking about a personality profile, and it took me
Mhm.
3 years to get my mother to take that because for her, childhood wasn't so great. And so we had to kind of push through some of that. But it gives you such great insights when you ask someone, what did you want to be when you were 10? It's
Right.
fascinating to hear those answers.
Right, right. And I think sometimes people may miss the underlying picture because, I wanted to be a pediatric oncologist when I was like 5.
Fancy,
What child
fancy.
says oncologist at 5? But whatever. Um, and at first I thought it was something that was so concrete, but I think it really speaks to just the need to help people and have an impact that it was more so than an actual title.
I hear you.
And I think that's what people need to look at when they're looking at that 10-year-old self or their younger self, to really dig down what's the underlying strength, what's the underlying value that's there.
I love that. I have a client who has recently helped her mom transition. There's a big industry helping people transition out of those big homes into retirement, and so she's been doing that with her mom.
Mhm.
Her parents never changed her room. Never changed her room. So she went into her room while she's helping her mother get ready to move, and it was like literally a time warp. And she found old journals and she found old clothes. And what was interesting is she said, Kelly, I now remember myself. And
Mm.
that's why I do that 10-year-old, because she remembers she was that little girl in the neighborhood who loved playing sports. But by goodness, every single boy in that neighborhood was going to come to her classroom in her garage and be taught something. She was going to give them a lesson in something. And she realized how much she loves teaching.
Mm.
And those propensities, they don't always come out as articulate as you said, you will be ABC, but it's those
Mhm.
propensities, those things that you just seem to do naturally, even as a child, gives you some great clues,
Right.
especially if you're not sure.
Right. Yes, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's cool. Now, I have a random question because I thought
All right.
about it as I was doing the intro,
Uh-huh.
and you talked about the midlifers and the Gen X, wait, Gen
Gen
Z.
Y, Gen Z. Yeah.
Okay, I'm a Gen Xer. Okay,
Me too.
that's why I always that's why I was thinking that one first, the Gen Y, Gen Z. Um, and it's going to be a strange question. I will say that
Mhm.
when you think about those two sort of different ends of the spectrums,
Yeah.
is there anything that you think we can each learn from each other in terms of being able to find our authentic self, or being able to accept our authentic self and kind of that vision that is out there for your life?
Yeah, yeah. My generation, I think we were kind of raised shields up.
Mm.
You walked into the corporate space in your navy blue business suit and your briefcase, and you shall not break down those walls. No one shall see they see the facade, right? Shields up. And what makes that interesting is we look at maybe the generation behind us and we think, well, they're all into the authenticity and so on. I'll offer shields are still up, because there is sometimes that fear of asking for help, thinking that you have to figure it all out.
Mhm.
And I remember feeling that way. That's why I love working with that age group, because I remember thinking I have to figure this out by myself
Yeah.
and I can't ask, because then I might seem as not knowing. And so there's a lot that we can learn from each other. One, I never want to be that person who says, well, young people like you, no, no. We're in a professional environment, we're professionals first. That age thing needs to be tossed, and I have things to learn from you and vice versa. And so I think there's some great opportunities for just some collaborative ways of looking at things. And I'm always very careful with all of that. In the job that I have full time, I do technology. We teach applications as well as doing some soft skills. And I can never say, oh, because a certain age they'll do certain things with technology. It's just not true. It really depends on personality, what that person is all about in terms of their end goal. I know 35-year-olds who refuse to use their computer for applications. I know 70-year-olds who are completely up to speed.
Right.
So when we think about these various generations, I think there's such a great opportunity for collaboration. But all of us, let's be willing to drop those shields down just a little bit, those facades down a little bit. There's some risk involved,
Mhm.
but boy, when you do that, you just get some amazingly good stuff out of it.
Right. Right. And I was that corporate woman in the black suit.
Yeah.
Little pumps. What do you, when it comes to that shield, and I think
Hmm.
that's probably one reason why corporate never felt right to me, because I always felt like I was showing up as my representative. What
Yeah.
do you think is one thing that people can use to kind of break down a little bit of that shield?
What I've learned as a trainer and as an instructor and teacher is when I show a little bit of humanity,
Mm.
then it lets people know, oh, you're human too. You're human too. And there's something about that that just kind of opens up the wall, and people are willing to drop their guard a little bit. What I've learned, particularly in training environments and teaching environments, is that adults, in my opinion, manifest their fear in anger, So if you can offer a safety that it's okay to be a little scared, this has been a challenge of mine as well, etc., you kind of help to ease that out a little bit and diffuse. I had a friend, kind of talking about all that about 3 or 4 years ago. She sent me a Brene Brown book on CD. And I said, I'm not listening to that crap. I'm not going to listen to all that. And she said, no, you need it. And, I laughed and I said, okay. And she and I've been friends since our 20s. So I knew that she was giving me some good input. And I listened to that and I thought, okay, I'm starting to get this a little bit more. But I do think that when we're willing to show some humanity, you have to use your boundaries, right? But when you're willing to show, hey, I'm human, I've had struggles, I've had fears, these things have made me nervous as well, people realize that they're not alone. I think so many times, until we're willing to open up and have a little bit of a conversation, people really do start to isolate and they think, oh, I'm all alone in this.
Right.
No, you're not.
Right.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. And that kind of leads me down another thought process of not being alone. And you mentioned this a little while ago, talking about the color code. And that was really one of the times in corporate where I felt like I was no longer alone, because you kind of find like your tribe. It's like, oh, you're like me. Like you're so much like me. It's not just me out here that's kind of like funny or quirky, and you kind of feel a little bit more of camaraderie. And
oh yeah,
right. I know a lot of people do that type of analysis in corporate, but I don't think it's really talked about sort of in the entrepreneurial space, which I know a lot of you out there are entrepreneurs. So from your perspective, Kelly, first of all, tell us about the color code personality test and kind of what it is before we get into it.
Yeah, thank you. So I actually discovered it on a personal level first. My husband and I were listening to a speaker, and I looked at my husband and said, I'm a red, you're a white, and this explains everything. And we had a great laugh, and I went and bought the book and decided to learn more about it. And what I loved about it, it was so relatable and it was easy to understand. A lot of these personality profiles get complex. And for me, applicability is where these have their value. If I can have, number one, my own emotional self awareness, huge. But two, if I can use that as a tool to understand you better and communicate in those pieces, that is a win-win, especially for an entrepreneur, because as we know, our business is mostly often built in relationship. So how do you communicate with that person? I actually went through, we decided, I told my husband, I said, I want to take money out of savings. I want to get certified in this and I want to teach it. And it's been around about 30 years. There are 4 colors. And what makes it different to me is that it doesn't necessarily change. With something like the DISC or your Strengths Finder, which are both incredibly valid and very good, but you have to kind of take them a little bit regularly because they tend to be situational. I took my Strengths Finder again just recently as part of a class I'm teaching, and it's been 10 years and there's been change. And the DISC, I'm afraid I'm still a high D, but it does adjust a little bit. So with color code, the premise is based on your driving core motive, and it is innate. It is what you were kind of born with, so it doesn't change. Now, I kind of joke, we've all learned how to get along well with others, and so we may have buffered. But for me, Dr. Erika, what made this a game changer, one, was in my marriage. It helped in our communication. My husband and I have been married almost 17 years, and we failed every single premarital test our pastor gave us.
Oh, wow.
Every single one. And he would look at us and just shake his head and go, y'all sure you want to do this? And we go, yeah, we're in, we're good. And he said, well, love makes you dumb. I mean, that was, and we found out later with color code, we're complementary opposites, but it does give us a framework for conversation. And for me, in a professional space, it helped me to understand why, in my case, I feel like a fish out of water a lot. Well, I have a really dominant personality, and I've had to learn how to filter and kind of shift that over the years. But in the department that I work in the law firm, I'm the only red. I'm the only red. And I thought, oh, instead of shaming myself, because I think we do that a lot, well, I should be able to fill in your blank. And I think that word should gets used often as a substitute for shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I really try to avoid that. But it helped me to understand why, in certain situations, I am a fish out of water.
Right.
And I do sometimes struggle to look for my tribe and for my people.
Mm-hmm.
And that has just been huge. It's also really helped me as an entrepreneur with my clients. And I'll break down the color code for you, but I'll give you a quick clue. Some clients, they need a lot of time to think,
Right.
they got to process. Yeah. And so there are others, they're going to be able to give you their answer immediately. You
Right.
want the red one or the yellow one? Up, red, good, go. Let's go. We'll see you. And as a coach, how important is that? How important is it that I know this person needs to process? They're going to think about it for a couple days. They may journal about it, where
Mm-hmm.
someone else is not going to need that. And that's, to me, so very valuable.
Yeah.
If you are selling a tangible product, let's throw a car out there. If you know the driving core motive of that person, if you can pick up on those pieces, then you're going to know what's going to be important to them about that car. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of you just blowing all the features and benefits to somebody that all they're thinking is it going to make me look good? I'm good. And then there's going to be that other person that needs to know all about the 5-point safety harness and how they're going to put their child in properly.
Right.
Those are valuable tools,
Yeah.
valuable tools.
Yeah. And I think it really becomes important, especially when you're thinking about new entrepreneurs,
Mm.
because sometimes, and I speak from experience being a relatively new entrepreneur, you think that there's just this one right way of doing things, and you try to fit into that box. But again, you
Yes.
just don't fit into whatever, Susie or Tommy or Billy or whoever, what they were doing. And it's because the way you were built, the way you were designed is not how they were designed.
Oh, that's so important. I love to say to people, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I believe that. And what that also means is you are your own individual. And if you feel that little niggling inside that says, this isn't for me, this isn't the way that I think that I need to be for my business and my authentic self, trust it. Trust your intuition. It's there for a reason. And I've noticed that with when you start as an entrepreneur, this there's a million little conferences to go to and freebies by the thousands
Everywhere. Yes.
everywhere, and you can find yourself in the spin of distraction. Try my 5 day. I've got 4 things, and I really just sat down not so long ago and said, hold up, what is the right fit for you, for your authentic self, for your passion? Doesn't mean you can't learn,
Mhm.
doesn't mean you can't improve, but get yourself off of that hamster wheel cycle of kind of jumping, oh, no. And I love that you said that. When you look at color code with the driving core motives, there are 4. A red, the driving core motive is power.
Mhm.
I like to rephrase that to action.
Mhm.
Reds are going to get you from point A to point B. I think that's where, as a coach, I'm a red. I'm really good with clients who need to take action. They need a catalyst. They need to do it in a safe way.
Mhm.
The other colors, blue, by the way, that's my secondary. So we could talk about that another time. You can analyze me. But a blue, their driving core motive is intimacy. Now, I like to reframe that because people immediately think about physical. I like to reframe that to connection. By the
Right.
way, Dr. Erika, I think blues have struggled during the period that we're in because guess what's been cut in so many ways?
Yeah.
Connection.
Connection.
And a blue is your value person. They are all about quality. They want to be good. So
Mhm.
guess what? A blue is going to need some time. They're going to analyze everything. You've got to help them because they can go to perfectionism, to
Yeah.
that analysis paralysis.
And as you're saying, the intimacy part,
Mm-hmm.
I have conversations with people about group coaching versus
Yeah.
one-on-one coaching. And I feel like that kind of ties into that as well. Like everybody's not meant to do group coaching. Everybody's not meant to do one-on-one coaching. It depends on, like you just said, maybe it's more of a connection and how you want to connect with your clients that really drives
Yes.
it.
Yeah, some people are really independent minded. Some people
Mhm.
like to collaborate and bounce off, and you can tell. I mean, if I were to go back and look at the color codes through my group coaching, I bet a lot of them. There's been a couple of outliers, but a lot of blue because they need
Mhm.
that community and connection.
Right.
A white, I married a white. The Lord knew what He was doing, despite what the pastor said. But their driving core motive is peace, and
Mm.
what makes a white so beautiful is that they are so accepting. They are going to accept you for who you are as you are almost all the time.
Mhm.
They don't want their steady state to be disturbed. So, why does this matter if you find yourself maybe have that personality? Because whites don't like what I would refer to back in old business term, cognitive dissonance. If
Mm.
there is something that is disturbing their steady state, they will often be likely to go back to where they felt that steady state, whether it was good or not, it felt steady versus changing it up. And that is so important to know. If you've got someone, you're like, why do they keep going back to this? Or why can't I get them to move? We've got to think about where their driving core motive is.
Mm.
So a white's driving core motive is peace. I joke maybe halfway he's kept me out of jail. Probably kidding there. But they really are peacemakers and they want to maintain peace. They want to be accepted, so they're going to accept you. Now, quick sidebar, Dr. Erika, don't get them mad. They have a long fuse, but once it's
Mm.
lit, I suggest you find another place to hang out for a
Oh,
while.
okay.
Just saying.
Get
A
another room.
yellow, a
Okay.
driving core motive for a yellow is fun. Now, for a lot of people that bothers them, they're like, oh, it's not serious. Well, actually, it's beautiful because if we think about it, they live in the moment. They
Mhm.
bring optimism and just a sense of enthusiasm to the world. And I have a grandson. My husband has an older daughter who has 4 kids, and so they're my grandbabies. And he's a yellow. And there are certain things about a yellow you never want to embarrass them in public.
Yeah.
If you need to correct a yellow, they're about being adored. And so you don't ever want them to lose face, if you will, in public.
Mhm.
They are also delightful and affectionate and will be a great person just to get some rest with, if that makes sense. And they bring a lightness to the world. And so obviously, we're all individuals, and people will say, well, all of these sound maybe a little bit like me. If you think about a piece of pie, think of that as 4 slices. Some of us have a bigger slice of a certain color than others. And so there's a lot of individuality in there. And one of the things that I like to tell people when we're talking about these profiles is I choose that this is not my identity. It's a tool in my toolbox. And that is where it becomes so valuable. It's a tool to help me have better emotional awareness about myself. And again, it really helps me to have some common space to work with my clients.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. Thank you for explaining the colors. That helps
Yeah.
kind of lay a good groundwork for what the color code is.
Hmm.
A question for you, because some people may be listening to this and say, well, I'm a red, so that means I can't have any clients that are blue or yellow. I'm sticking with my red group. Is that the way to go?
I'm going to say no, and I'll tell you why. Because for me, we are all able to work with each other, just like we have to do that in so many spaces. We want to be able to understand each other's strengths and our driving core motives, and together we're just better. We are better together. What it does do is also call into something I call our character.
Mm.
For example, reds, we always think we're right, kind of always. Well, if I have good character, I'm also going to recognize that I'm probably not right all the time. And that's important. As a red, I can be very quick to act and quick to opinion. Now,
Mm.
think about this. If I were working with a blue client, what do I need to do? I need to acknowledge that that blue client may need more information than I may need.
Mm.
And that completely switches how maybe we communicate and interact. It
Mm.
also allows me to help be a catalyst for maybe a client that has a white personality that really needs to get off the bench and play. I have a very good friend who's a beautiful writer who went through my coaching program, and that is her personality. And so that is one of the things that we're working on is let's get you off the bench and get you into play. That bench feels so much safer. It's so much more peaceful. It doesn't bring in potential challenge. But the flip side of it is she knows, she's got that intuition that tells her it's time to get off the bench and play. So I can be a helper to her. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Perfect. So another question that just popped into my head was, when you're having your clients do this analysis, what are their thoughts? Because, people have done so many different analysis in their life. What are their feelings about, what they find from their color code results?
Yeah. What's really interesting is so many people are like, why does this know me so well? It gives them incredible. I mean, they're just sitting there going, oh yeah. Oh, that's me. Yeah, that's me. And one of the things that color code does is it does have questions and it asks you about your childhood.
Mm.
And it's before as I said, you kind of learn how to filter and get along with others. It's more about that core personality.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do fine with that. Now, I will say there are some that do struggle. Maybe childhood wasn't so great. I have a good friend who struggled through it until we started walking through some of the questions together because she grew up the daughter of someone who was high up in the military. So they moved a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So she was constantly kind of having to reinvent herself, if you will, to get ready for a new school, to be able to make friends and so on. It's made her an incredibly charismatic, creative professional. And we finally were able to kind of drill down that she is a yellow, but we had to kind of work through some of those questions. But I never had anyone come back and go, nope, not me, has nothing to do with me, never gonna, it's usually some insights about, oh, that helps me understand why fill in the blank.
Yeah.
It helps me understand why, for me, people, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, well, Kelly, tell us how you really feel. And, I'm like, oh, okay. And then my late father, who was just like me, so you can imagine our exchanges, he used to say to me, they named a street sign after you, Kelly. One way. It was not a compliment. It was his gruff, manly, blue collar way of saying, hey, learn how to flex. You need to learn how to flex. And it was a good life lesson. It took me a while, but it was a good life lesson because he knew my personality and he knew me at my core because he was the same way. I have this wonderful evaluation. He went into the military, lied about his age, was on a ship at the age of 16. And there is some of his evaluations he was given. And one of them goes into, the strength of his character and how well he kept his workspace and how he was always so polished in his uniform. But he needed to quit saying his opinion so much. And I love that. I have a PDF of it that I just kind of look at every now and then and go, all right, daddy, but so it's delightful to learn about yourself, but also to realize where your limitations are.
Right.
And one thing that I learned a couple of years ago at a conference, and I just thought it was so wonderful. And I asked the man, I said, can I steal it? He said, yes. When we learn our limitations, what's so cool about it with the color code is we're not thinking of these as weaknesses. And that's a game changer, especially if you're someone who's prone to beat yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
And then this man said, instead of trying to overcome them, learn how to neutralize your limitations. Isn't that good? And I said, oh, I'm stealing this because it takes the shame out.
Right.
And we think about, okay, if I'm not naturally organized, instead of thinking I'm going to become the next Marie Kondo, what if I think about how to neutralize that limitation so that I can go back to my strengths and work within them?
Yeah, I like that.
And that's something that I think the color code does for a lot of people. It gives them bigger insights into their superpowers.
Yeah. Awesome. And I think that just the conversation just makes me realize, just as a coach myself, we give our clients these assessments. And sometimes we have to remember to give ourselves these assessments as well. So I'm definitely going to go back and do my own color code again.
Yay.
and just reanalyze. I've done the VIA strength, I've done disc, but yeah, I'm going to go back and do this one. So thank you
Awesome.
for that.
Awesome. Yes.
And you talked about a very lovely word that I love to hear, which is organization.
Hmm.
And I want to ask you about something, Kelly.
All right.
And I ask kind of every guest this as well, and we talked about, you're married, you have grandkids and kids, and just a busy corporate entrepreneur combination. And initially, you talked about your husband and kind of his role in helping you sort of manage everything. What's one thing you do in life that keeps you from sort of becoming overwhelmed and hitting a wall?
One of the things that I'm learning the hard way is a little bit about rest. I'm not there yet, but I also know it's really important to create systems that work for you. That
Yes.
work for you. That same friend that grew up military when I had an organizing business years ago.
Really?
And yes, it was called In Its Place.
Oh,
And so I had that bent, but she and I were doing some organizing and she said she had clothes all over. And what we did is we worked within her strengths. We put hooks on the wall. She hung her clothes up on hooks. Now, someone else is probably having a moment right now saying, no, there's a proper way to fold your clothes. They need to go in a color coded way. You have to go to the Container Store and buy the proper
yes.
things.
Short sleeve,
Um,
long sleeve. Yes.
I feel you. I feel you. But you know what? It was working within what worked for her. And
Right.
that to me is what's so important is I try to think about how do I work within my strengths and set up systems in place that work for me. Now, because I live with my husband, I am thankful that he is a fairly tidy person, but it's also thinking about what works for both of us.
Mhm.
And I realize that even though I Marie Kondoed his sock drawer, it's not going to stay
Right.
that way. So if I happen to put the socks away, I just don't look. I just kind of don't look because you know what? You got to pick your battles, right?
Exactly.
Um, but it's so interesting that you say that. I planned a couple of times this year. I'm actually going to be going in a couple weeks. I did it last year as well. Even for an extrovert like myself, one of the things that I took a chance on this time last year is I went on a personal retreat and I took a journal, which is not my bent. And I said, okay, I'm going to journal. And this year, 2021, despite all the stuff, has been the best year for my business ever.
Mm.
I have been able to do some things that I would not have been able to do. And I went again this past June and promised myself I was going to at least get an outline for a book I started 25 years ago and got that done. And then I'm going in a couple of weeks to do a kind of a planning retreat for 2021.
Okay.
Even as an extrovert, there is something about stopping and getting away from the distractions
Mhm.
of your regular day that it's transformative. It is really, really good. And so that's something that I took a risk. When I told my husband last year, I think I'm going to go on a personal retreat. He
Now,
said, by yourself.
where did you go?
So there is a mountain about an hour from where I live in south of Nashville,
Uh-huh.
and there is an old, I think it was a convent or some sort of Episcopalian type of place, but it's very quaint.
Mhm.
And I just went up there and spent a couple of days and just did some thinking. It wasn't anything fancy where, I have a good friend that grew up there. So she and I met for lunch a couple times and they were probably extra long lunches because I'd been alone for several hours. But it was just a great 1 hour away. So I didn't overwhelm myself with this really long drive. There's a lady that I meet with on Wednesday mornings, and she took my idea and found a little Airbnb recently that she felt like was clean and safe and all of those, and did the same thing. And she was talking just this past Wednesday about she'd never done anything like that before and what it did for her to help plan for 2021.
Mm.
So, take a risk on something that maybe sounds a little crazy. And again, the place I went to wasn't this long wear yourself out with all of the planning. It was very simple and just an hour away.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
I've heard a lot of people that have done that this year. I have not
Mhm.
tried it yet. I used to travel all the time for work by myself.
Mhm.
So the idea doesn't scare me. I just never thought about doing it for like the business planning or I don't know. Even though I've heard people do it, I have not taken it upon myself to do it yet. But I think I will put that into my calendar.
I was surprised at what a game changer it was, which is why
Yeah.
I did it again this summer. It just having a different space
Right.
just made all the difference in the
Yeah.
world. It kind of freed up your brain. Um, and I mean, if it may not be for everyone, it has been so great for me because it's been a way to quiet down all
Yeah.
the stuff in my head.
Yeah.
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 And in that conversation, you said that this year has been the best year for your business.
Hmm.
What do you think contributed to that sort of change?
As selfish as this sounds, I got some margin. So in my full-time job, there's about an hour commute on each end.
Mm,
And when we were able to work from home, my husband, we took a small bedroom and made a home office out of it. He builds cabinets, so he set me up really nicely. And so just having that space, that margin where I'm usually in traffic, really just trying to get there and get back, opened up some creative space in my brain, if that
mm,
makes any sense.
mhm.
I think a lot of us just flat out had to sit down and stop our running all over.
Yeah.
And that was helpful because we forget how many distractions sometimes we'll build into our life. And some of those distractions are good and welcome and needed. Others are maybe sometimes something we're putting in to keep us from pursuing that place where we need to stretch, that place where we feel the resistance, but we also know we have to go, if that makes sense.
Right. Right.
And I took a risk and got my own coach. I found this wonderful woman who is out in LA, and she was just a completely different change of pace from kind of the Southern lifestyle, if you will. And she has been a professional comedian, she's been a voiceover actress, she's been a radio DJ. And so she just brought a sense of creativity
Ah,
to kind of my little business stiff kind of thing. And it's been a delightful partnership. And that was, again, a risk I took. I
mhm.
decided I wanted somebody completely different from kind of the bubble that I was in.
Right.
And boy, that's been a really cool blessing from this year. Yeah.
Gotcha. What was the sort of roadblock to doing that sooner? Because you say it was a risk to take. So what kind of kept you from?
It's so interesting. I think we all, unless you're just really in a financially great place, I think sometimes when we look at these types of things, we see them as an extra.
Yeah.
And I was guilty of that, totally guilty. And it was interesting. I was asked to speak to my alumni group, and it was a broadcast live webinar back in January. It was recorded, and then so we had several views. And I had people contact me and said, I want you to coach me. And I thought, oh, okay. And so it just really was one of those things where I thought, wait a minute, that's fabulous. What a huge blessing. It was something that I just really hadn't made a full decision on.
Mm,
And then as a result of that, I thought, well, why don't you probably could use a little bit too. We all have to be teachable. And I really believe in being a lifelong learner. I wish I were smart with science, to be honest with you, but I find the field of neuroplasticity to be so awesome because it's proving we can change, that we
mhm.
can do better, and that we can achieve our purpose. And I have really just had to think, okay, what if you do a little bit of this for you?
Right.
And realized, oh, you know what? This isn't just a nice to have.
Yeah.
This is part of my development. There's a guy who's local, and he says everyone needs a coach in life. And I thought, yeah, we all need someone to be our catalyst. I'm overusing that word, but sometimes we need someone to give us different perspective. When I was talking to her a couple, probably about a week ago, I was telling her about kind of my own roadblock, and she said, well, how would you coach you?
Yeah.
And now don't do that to
Right.
me. Don't
Right.
make,
Right. Don't you hate it when that question's like turned around on you? Like,
nobody's turning that around. But it was a good point.
right. Right.
I said, I'm very uncomfortable right now. But it was a good lesson. It was a
Yeah.
good lesson. And I'm thankful. But, I think sometimes and I dealt with that when I was an organizer, people thinking that was an extra. But
Hmm.
if you've ever done organizing or had someone help you organize, you realize it is more than just, kind of crudely put, an organized sock drawer. It is so much more. And it really can change mindset. And as you know, mindset leads and then your action follows.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting your own coach or just asking for help, whatever it's a coach, consultant,
Yes.
mentor, whatever, you're going to need something there because there are going to be days where you don't want to do it. There are going to be days where that monster in the back of your head is like, you have no right doing what you're doing, you know?
Oh, yeah. And what's interesting is I talked to someone the other day. She had her website, she got her coaching certification, she had done everything but coach.
Mm,
And I said, "What's stopping you?" She said, "I'm worried about taxes." And I said, tell me more. Well, I'm worried that I will have to owe the government taxes. And I said, "You haven't had your first coaching client yet.
right.
Let's baby step into this." And guess what? If that's not your strength, if it's a limitation, we're going to figure out how to neutralize it. We're going to go find your tax person.
Yeah.
So if that's what's stopping you from pulling that trigger, well, let's neutralize that right now and let's
Mhm.
get you back to your fun zone. And
Yeah.
she's not rare. We
Yeah.
all do that. We go, "Oh, well, I can't do ABC until I do D.
Right.
Can we worry about A first?
Hmm.
We'll plan for D. Well, let's maybe move into A first, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense."
Yeah. No, it does. It does. Awesome. So as we move into 2021, Kelly, what's
Hmm.
on the horizon for Kelly K coaching or consulting? I'm sorry.
I am super excited about, I'm starting 3 levels for my coaching groups. We're going to have start, next, and finish.
Ooh.
And because some people really they're in the next, they've gone through my next coaching program and they're ready to really build that into action.
Hmm.
But as you and I've talked about earlier, some people know they want to start, they just don't know where.
Yeah.
And that may be the best fit. I'm actually doing a 4-day start challenge. Today was day 2, just on my Facebook group. And we're picking something small and we're kind of walking through some simple steps. What is it that you want to get done in 2020 so you don't walk into 2021 with it?
Hmm.
So I'm really excited about continuing with those coaching groups and doing those one-on-ones as well. And then I just love being able to go out and speak with groups. I've got a couple webinars that are planned, and to me, the virtual space, I don't mind it. Some people have said, "Well, if I can't speak in front of a group live, then I don't want to speak at all." To me, it's opened up my scope.
It has.
I've been able to geographically expand in ways I would have
Yeah.
never thought. I was limited in my geographical thinking. I bet, you probably heard that. So 2021, I think, is an opportunity to keep that framework of open geography and open to those pieces.
Hmm.
And then, I know I have a personal also goal of getting my health a little bit back in order. I've done a lot of sitting in 2020.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, lot sitting. So I have a lady coming to the house next week who I go to church with, and she is Miss Fitness America. And I said, "I want you to very nicely and with grace, please, please, Grace, give me an assessment." Because I think I need a little bit of a change up in that area for
Right.
2021. Yeah.
Awesome. That's funny. When everything shut down, because like I said, I used to travel so much. So I said, well,
Mm.
I'll be home. I'll be able to lose weight for sure now. Yeah, that was a lot in myself. So
We
I'm
just
right there with you.
Yeah, I just didn't realize how much movement you get just by taking yourself to your car and
Yeah.
going through your parking garage and some of
Yeah.
those pieces. And then, we stopped going places
Yeah.
in so many ways. Now, the state I'm in is not as locked down as a lot of other geographical areas. I kind of call us the wild, wild west when I talk to different people. They're like, "You go where?" I haven't left my house since March. What are you doing? But it has changed, and I think there were a couple of months there. I bet I'm not the only one. There was a day, I'll just share with you quickly. I may have done some extra online shopping,
Oh
maybe,
yeah.
and all the boxes arrived on the same day. So my husband, who's never come home from work, they always have gone to the office. He came home one day, and we have a very equal, even relationship. We don't have any kind of dictator or anything like that. But the boxes just happen to all arrive on the same day. And so I walk out into the garage to say hello, and I can't begin to explain to you how many boxes arrived on the same day. And he said, you think you might want to slow down?
Yeah, just a little bit.
So 2021, one of my goals is to get back to my little bit more. I think we all did it. We either found our favorite wine, we found a refreshing love for ramen noodles and Pop-Tarts, or we did some shopping. I don't know.
Yeah, ramen noodles, shopping, and cookies. That was me.
I actually asked my husband one day, my grandsons, they always got mad because at my house I make them eat healthy. And I actually called my husband one day. I said, would you bring me home some ramen noodles? And I hung up the phone. I thought, what has happened to me?
Right.
It is, but I think we've all had something where we've switched our gear a little bit. Yeah.
I hadn't had ramen noodles since college.
I know, right?
Who knew? Who knew they could be so tasty in a bind?
No judgment over here, I promise.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Kelly, it has been awesome having you here.
Thank you.
And we have come to the time in our show where we switch gears a little bit.
All right.
And we hit our Fab Four. Are you ready? And do you accept the challenge, Kelly?
I accept the challenge, Dr. Erika.
Hey. As everybody knows, our Fab Four is just a random lot of questions, and just kind of to wrap up, have fun. I'm quirky and crazy, so that's what I do. And it's my show, so I can do that. Right. So Kelly, whatever comes to your mind, you just say it. Are you ready?
Okay.
What's the strangest food you've ever eaten?
Oysters.
Okay. Did you like them?
I like oysters Rockefeller. I think that means they're fried with a lot of cheese.
Yes, I think that would be correct. I'm not
oysters, no.
No, I'm not a raw oysters person either. Yeah, okay. All right. If you had a magic wand, what 3 things would you change about the world?
I would value children more. I would value the elderly more. And I would eliminate traffic.
Okay. I love it. Cool.
Yeah.
And the third one, and you probably ought to have an answer to this since you just wrote a book, possibly. If you were to write a book about yourself, what would you name it?
I will tell you the name of the book that I'm working on.
Okay.
And it's copywritten. It is, get ready, ladies.
Okay.
Chin hairs and other things mama didn't tell you about your 20s.
Chin hairs and other, okay. That's an intriguing book. That's not the title I was expecting. Okay. Is that coming out?
Change it if you want. I have a friend that told me if I don't finish this, that she is going to, I think, physically and publicly flog me.
Oh.
So we're about 80% done. Okay. And I got to get some more stories in there. But it comes from, I've learned, just like we were talking about before, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
Love it. Okay, we'll be on the lookout. Chin hairs and other things your mama didn't tell you about your 20s.
About your 20s.
All right. The last one, just finish the statement.
Okay.
I am
a child of God.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being here again. It's been awesome having you. If people want to stay connected with you, learn how to work with you, how can they find you?
The easiest thing is just to go to my website. It's www.kellyknowles.net. And you can even shoot me an email, Kelly with a Y at kellyknowles.net. It's spelled just the way Beyonce spells her name. And that is probably the easiest way to catch me. I also have a Facebook group, Kelly K Consulting, that you're welcome to check out. Tomorrow is day 3 of the Start Small Challenge, so it's not too late to jump in. It's free.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly, again. And thank you guys for listening and joining. That's all we have for today's episode, and hope to see you again next time. All right, everybody, have a great day. Bye.